Hey, hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Nostalgia Trap podcast. My name is David Parsons. I am happy to bring you another episode, and I hope you enjoy it. This conversation is with Felix Biederman. Felix is one-third of the podcast Chapo Trap House. I know that many Nostalgia Trap listeners also listen to Chapo Trap House. It's a show that blends kind of comedy and political analysis. Really, really fun stuff on that show. And if you haven't checked it out, you should. Felix told me a lot about his background. I didn't know anything about him, and I got to learn, kind of the very kind of compelling mix of things that he is. I know he would dispute this, but I consider him to be a pretty powerful political voice online, and I really appreciate his writing and perspective, and I know a lot of people do. We got to talk about MMA a little bit, which many listeners of the show know that I have a kind of obsession with unpacking MMA as a phenomenon, but also I love the fighting, and I wanted to hear more from a big fan of MMA, and Felix has a lot to say about that. So we talked about that, and mainly we talked about the prospect of no longer the prospect, the reality of a Donald Trump presidency, and how wrong we all were in assuming that Hillary Clinton had this in the bag. And Felix, had a lot of thoughts on that because we recorded this conversation basically about like 24 hours after Trump's victory. And so we both are kind of like in that kind of stunned moment and trying to figure out how it all happened. I think we both had a lot of thoughts. Who knows how right or wrong those thoughts are? But I had a really great time talking to Felix. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. There is so much more Nostalgia Trap at nostalgiatrap.com. All the episodes are free, but there is a donate button at the top of the page. If you want to throw me a few dollars, I wanted to thank the people who have done so. It really helps me keep this whole project going. I have many more episodes for you to come, so I hope you enjoy this conversation with me and Felix Biederman.
I mean, I, like many people, ate total shit on my predictions.
Yeah.
I have no trouble owning up to that. And I saw the worst part about it, I saw, in the week and a half before, I saw these warning signs, like Elsie Hastings, a member of the House from Florida, talked to Politico, and he said, Clinton isn't doing any black outreach in Florida. And I went, oh, man, that's a shitty sign for her, and I posted it. And, I guess, liberals that I have open diplomatic relationships with were like, no, man, don't worry. Hastings is just talking shit. We're doing a great job. And I guess you want to believe certain things. You want to go, well, if I worry about that, what am I going to do anyway?
Yeah, I feel like I feel like there was, for me, what you're talking about kind of hits the idea that I had that, like, well, the Democratic machine is so in place that they're going to just be able to make this happen the way they always do. And I felt like like black outreach in Florida would be something that would be an automatic thing, that Trump would never have any of that kind of infrastructure to make it happen. He's just going on pure personality. He has no real Democrat, or he has no real machinery to make this actually happen. But we were wrong about everything.
The worst pick we made was that Clinton would win Ohio by an eyelash. And we thought this because we had read articles about Trump's operation there, and they were just like unaffiliated but enthusiastic guys who were feuding with the state GOP chair. And, Kasich famously said, oh, I'm voting for John McCain, the moderate guy who sends weapons to Al-Qaeda and wanted to bomb the Soviet Union when he was a pilot, that moderate guy.
That's so moderate.
I know. We love our moderates. But and we thought, well, no one in Ohio is that excited to vote for her. But we thought lack of enthusiasm plus a ground game makes up for enthusiasm against people with no organizing experience. Clearly we were wrong. And it's one of the bad parts about that being wrong is, we built this Karl Diggler thing on being like, oh, we're smarter than these fucking assholes. And now I wake up today and go, wow, I was just as much in a fucking bubble as
You
these
are
guys.
one of those assholes.
I know.
Literally. I mean, for those who don't know who you are and what you do, you mentioned Karl Diggler. Who is Karl Diggler?
Karl Diggler is a fictional pundit made by me and Virgil Texas, and sort of satire of like Ron Fournier, Mark Halperin.
Mm-hmm.
He's a very like horse race journalist, Chris Cillizza. And during the primary, we had this unprecedented success in picking races. We were, the few guys who, the moment Trump goes down off the escalator, go, no, yeah, he's got this. He's got the nomination.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to do it. And we did such a good job. We picked so many upsets. And this year, we put together the map. And we have never eaten shit on predictions like this. And, you want to believe.
Now you're in the Nate Silver failure circle.
You know what's fucked up? Nate was closer to being correct than we were. Yeah.
Oh, the deep irony.
I've lost physical fights where I talked a lot of shit before. This is worse.
Yeah.
This is worse than that.
God. So, I mean, would you describe yourself? Because I don't know how a person like you becomes Karl Diggler, and I don't know who you are, but would you describe yourself as more history buff or more politics junkie? I know you love those terms.
Well, I'm the same biography as Dan McLaughlin, the baseball
Right.
critic. Law, conservative politics, baseball.
I feel like a lot of Chapo listeners are probably history buffs / politics junkies, though. I mean, all right. So, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Hyde Park in Chicago.
And what kind of life did you have as a kid? Like, do you think of yourself as coming from like a working class family?
Oh, no.
Upper middle class family. And did you go to private schools?
I went to the University of Chicago Lab School. Look, I grew up in a fucking bubble. My dad was kind of like his beliefs were closer to being a tanky. He was very anti-imperialist, and that's something I definitely picked up from him. My mom was a bit more of a liberal, but more of a realist than like a Joan Walsh liberal. But it's still, I grew up in Hyde Park. I grew up around the University of Chicago. I grew up around, the Pinochet Center for Monetary Research and all the evil shit they have there.
But around people that talk politics, it sounds like. It sounds like your parents were both political people.
My dad was extremely well read, as is my mom. My mom actually got me, she's a Francophile. She got me really interested in Napoleon as a kid, which kind of led to my very spectrum-y obsession with Gulf politics through a roundabout way. But no, I definitely grew up upper middle class. I had a lot of weird experiences growing up. I had a very odd adolescence compared to most people born in the circumstances that I am. That, like, gay, So I grew up with less of a bubble than a lot of people, but you still grow up in a bubble. No matter what you do in your adolescence, as long as you know that you have this cushion of being upper middle class and white, as I did, you're still in a bubble.
Yeah.
You're still in a bubble. That's not an experience most people have.
No, I know. I mean, I come from a more, I guess, suburban bubble, but I felt like it crippled me in a lot of ways. to kind of move through the rest of the society, as much as there is like an undeniable kind of material privilege to being part of that community. At the same time, there is the feeling that I didn't know a lot. Where'd you go to college?
Well, I was fucking terrible at school.
Before that, so at school, you mentioned odd adolescence.
Yes.
What was odd about your adolescence?
Well, I really hated Hyde Park. Yeah. I did hate snobbishness, and there was a lot of it there.
Right.
And there's a lot of it in Chicago. Chicago is a very stratified, segregated city. And I was sort of, I felt bored growing up there. And I felt just like missing out in the world. And, I had different friends than a lot of people. I had a lot of friends who were in sort of weirder parts of Chicago, places like around cat's over here.
Yeah.
Places like near the far north side, sort of on the border between Rogers Park and other parts. People in Englewood, and then people
I don't know these places. Are these from the wrong side of the tracks, people?
I guess you could say that, but they were great. Some of my friends were great people. Some of them were sort of like, under better circumstances would have been, could have probably had easier lives and, had to make an impossible series of choices. And, the remainder of my friends who weren't, from like sort of the North Shore and these other places where they shared my socioeconomic beginnings, they were from rural Illinois, like way out in the sticks. So I think it was just, I was really rejecting what I grew up around. I really did hate it. I really did hate that sort of psychotic, achievement-minded thinking. And I was just also, I was a fucking hard kid to have. From the moment I was born, I would never sleep. I would cry to be picked up and scream and hit you until you get put back down. I was pissed off all the time. I just had all this energy, and I was never going to be able to hold it together to like get internships and all this shit.
Yeah,
so that's one of our best friends. He started out in high school. He was a pretty successful weed dealer, and he eventually turned into the guy who robs drug dealers.
Right.
He was also the 27-year-old who hangs out with 16-year-olds.
So this is essentially Omar from The Wire that you're describing.
Not at all. Not at all. He was this, he drove this Nissan Pathfinder, and one day he rolls up and the entire like front seat is burnt out. There's this tiny replacement seat there. And you go, Brian, what the fuck? What happened to your car? He's like, oh, this guy that hates me threw a bomb in there. Just like totally no-selling it. But that excited me. That excited me because, you have your shitty little upper middle class kid on Wii, and you look at the other people and they go, well, I'm on the wait list at Brown. And you're like, that's so fucking boring. You don't feel something crying out inside.
Yeah.
That everything's just slipping away. You don't want fucking excitement. So I did a lot of dumb shit as a kid. And it was also weird times for me growing up for other reasons, but yeah.
How did that fit into, I mean, if it did at all, like, what was going on around you in terms of at what point do you hook up with American politics, in other words? Like, because was that an interest of yours always?
Yes.
And how much, was there any connection between like your acting out and you're kind of hanging out with this crazy crowd? Is there any connection to like the kind of larger alienation from the whole American project?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't really...
Am I reaching there?
No, I don't think so. Well, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily put my alienation on par with somebody who, is economically and socially marginalized from society. I was just kind of shitty and bored and weird. But, I grew up in this sort of weird era, transitional era of American liberalism. And what I was being told was the truth about everything, was not what I was seeing. I was seeing, you see people who are just, as I said, forced into an impossible series of choices where they cannot survive in the paths that are given to them. And then you hear people go, you know what? All people need is an earned income tax credit.
Right.
And you go, geez, have you ever fucking seen anything outside of where you live?
Yeah.
It's a different world out there. There are people who just live totally outside of the liberal set of values. It is so foreign and theoretical to them that this program, this prescription that they offer, means nothing. It means nothing.
It also explains a little bit of like the development of like the resentment of like your resentment of like policy wonks and like that kind of like the people that like take it for granted that like everybody thinks this way and we like these are our common goals as if those things exist.
It's liberal chauvinism, and I'm almost getting into what I guess like John Stossel territory when I say this, but for people who supposedly preach open-mindedness, they do sort of think everyone sees the world in the way that they do.
Yeah,
they think everyone has had the same experiences, has the same value judgments. I liken it to Jeb Bush this year. Why did Jeb Bush think why did he think he'd win?
Yeah.
In spite of everything, in spite of every number, in spite of every reality, in spite of the changing country around him. Jeb Bush thought he would win because he's a guy who's followed rules his entire life. or the rules as were defined to him and his set of people. And he goes, I don't get it. I'm doing everything right. I'm saying the right things. I did the paleo diet. I'm wearing my little quarter zip sweater, and I'm making silly little vines, and I'm being adorable, but I'm a strong leader who's going to stand up to Putin. And this guy is insulting my wife, and I can't get him to apologize, and everyone is laughing at me. What's going on?
Yeah.
Well, holy shit, the rules are only going to take you so far.
Yeah.
And
I mean, what you're describing seems like what happened to Hillary Clinton, too.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
It's kind of this assumption that, like, it all just falls into place just because. There was no... I mean, I feel like there was so very little engagement with any substantive policy at all from this campaign.
Yeah, and what...
It was, I'm with her. That's it.
I'm with her. What a silly thing to say. What a silly fucking thing to say. And... the thing I was thinking about the 3 days before, when I was like, you know what? I think Trump might have like a 30% chance of winning, whatever useless metric that is. How do we know we live in the 30% world versus the 70% world? But I kept thinking about when he goes, I am your voice.
Yeah.
And you go, oh, holy shit, people really want to vote for a guy who says that.
Yeah.
And it's not that Trump people came out in waves. It's that no one wanted to buy the Clinton thing. Yeah, she won the popular vote, but she fucking blew it in places where Obama killed and especially 8 years ago. And the lesson that they should learn from this is that politics, as Matt Bruenick says, is the question of who gets what. Mm-hmm. Politics is not the question of who am I defined by who I am not.
Yeah, right.
People aren't going to buy that.
No, I mean, it really... It should be. I mean, to me, politics ought to be kind of much more centered on kind of how the wealth is divided up and who gets what, right? And that fight is at this point. I mean, I don't even know where we are with the people thinking about what they want from the Trump government, what they're imagining, because there's a lot of projection that's so strange to me from these this set of Washington analysts that you talk about so much on Chapo and you attack so well, is that kind of like they all were just talking about Trump as like a fascist and as Hitler and as literally Hitler, and he's a rapist and he's a rapist and he's a fascist, and then like today they're like, well, actually he's very statesmanlike, and they're kind of like impressed by him already.
Well, they're like
insane.
They are like Hillary. Hillary spent like 35 years of baggage executing a mentally disabled black man before the election, the crime bill, Iraq, the sanctions on Iraq, all this shit, the repeal of Glass-Steagall. Then this year, people go, what's the problem? It's the most progressive DNC platform ever.
Right.
Well, maybe the problem is that people think you're an asshole if you've been saying something different for 34 years before until this year. Forgive them if they don't immediately believe you.
Right.
And they're doing the same thing now. I think secretly a lot of these guys are excited. They missed the Bush years.
Of course.
They missed being in their mind, the resistance. I'll say that before I break my wrist doing a jerk-off motion.
Right.
But they like it. They like grandstanding. Keith Olbermann, his desk just rose 4 inches thinking about making more special comments.
Doing his Edward R. Murrow impression that he's been doing for 15 years now. That kind of self-righteousness, I really wonder, like, who they're really aiming at with that attitude, because it's like, you're not... I mean, I think you mentioned... people like John Oliver and even the whole like Daily Show crew before and after Jon Stewart, like they just have an attitude that seems like it's meant to be like it's very exclusive in a sense of like we're the elite club that gets things, and kind of like not really understanding that there's a club outside and that there are other clubs outside of it. You've mentioned like feeling like. It's kind of weird because you have this sense. It seems like from a time when you were young that there are worlds outside of those elite bubbles, and that those worlds are somewhat rougher and realer than the elite bubble likes to describe it. But like for you're in a, like MMA, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and like MMA's come up on the show a couple of different times. And like the few times I've brought it up to like academic types, elite types who shall go unnamed, they're always like, ugh, like no one knows what to even think about it. And if their reaction is generally, if they do react to it, it's like, well, isn't that a sad reflection of the barbaric zeitgeist we're a part of? But I have a feeling that you don't feel that way.
Oh,
and
no.
the other time that MMA has come up is with I don't know. He's probably a guy that you wouldn't even appreciate, but is a historian named Thaddeus Russell, who does a
I'm
kind
familiar,
of like
yeah.
he does, and he talks about MMA in a kind of like, you know, this is working class culture, and this is something that is like a part of an America that a lot of that elite bubble doesn't understand. I mean, do you think of MMA as like engaged in any of that political stuff, or how did you get into the combat arts?
Well, I am going to be working on a sort of big MMA related project. I don't want to give away too much of it, but
well, when did your interest start?
My interest in MMA started. You know, I'd always watched fights when I could. You know, early memories of using LimeWire to watch Pride. You know, Shogun Hua during his legendary Grand Prix in 2005. One of the most amazing sports stories ever. But I really, really got into it when I was about 19. And it was 19 was a strange time for me because I was going to like a city college in Chicago because I didn't get any school I wanted to get into. And my parents were separated and my dad had just gotten diagnosed with cancer. And, you know, before that I would do all this weird, dangerous shit through my adolescence and go, well, you know what? I'm going to be fine then. I'll be fine. You know, just telling myself that. And then, you know, enough things fuck up in a row, you go, oh, wait, did I just completely fuck myself? Because everything is going to hell right now. But I got really into it at that time. And I got really into it. You know, it is exciting. I think it's the purest form of competition. And it is such pure combat. And at its best, it can be so beautiful and intense and, you know, like
when you say that
art.
Beautiful and intense for the participants or for the people watching?
The participants and the viewers.
Yeah.
You know, one of the most intimate things two people can do outside of fucking is to fight because they learn so much about themselves and each other. And, you know, oftentimes fighters don't like each other still after the fights, but oftentimes they just embrace when it's a great fight because they have learned so much and they have shared this thing that they could never really explain to anyone else.
Yeah.
Because they lived it. But I loved it because I really poured myself into it because it was just, you know, just these incredible acts of physical courage. These people doing things that seemed impossible. People that, you know, were taking this very solitary journey. It's a very lonely sport.
Yeah.
And it has a very low odds of success. And when they would make it, you know, you were on one hand, you know, like me, I was told you have to follow the rules your entire life or it's going to go to shit. And I hadn't followed the rules, and I thought my life's going to go to shit. But then I would see these guys who I thought had something in common with me. Like MMA, there is often a class divide in there, but the one commonality that binds most MMA fighters from any country, from any culture, is that oftentimes they're societal outcasts. They could not really fit in to conventional society.
You're Rocky Balboa's.
Rocky Balboa is to the real life example. I think the best example of this, Nick Diaz.
Yeah,
my favorite fighter, and the
guy that beat Conor McGregor.
Oh, that was Nate Diaz. It's his brother. Also a great fighter.
Oh, you're talking Nick Diaz.
Nick Diaz.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean those are like classic class stories. When when Nate Diaz beat McGregor, I felt like this became a personal story for me all of a sudden because these are like Latino immigrant dudes from California,
yes,
from like really shitty places. Like the story with Nate Diaz is that he like goes and goes to train at the gym because he gets a burrito every day. He literally like it's a path to a meal, and it, you know, becomes something that becomes much more meaningful for him. But yeah, the reason I brought it up is in part because I feel like your MMA thing makes you very different for someone who would be ostensibly on the left.
Well, there are a lot of fight fans who, you know, are with me. But I think I took a different path to the left than a lot of people. I skew more towards anti-authoritarianism than anything. And I strongly believe that, in socialized medicine and things like this. But I'll be the first to tell you, no one's going to get me fucking confused like Matt Brunig or Ryan Cooper. I'm not good at giving you numbers and figures and stuff like that for domestic policy. I've just never been good at that.
Yeah, me neither.
I have my hard set beliefs, but I know more about foreign policy, but only with like a few specific places. But no, I mean, I just, in my heart, I think everyone starts out like this. They have one thing in their heart that really speaks to them, that really evokes this rage when they see it exploited.
Right.
For me, it's the abuse and overreach of authority.
Yeah.
For other people, maybe that's economic exploitation. But there is no right or wrong for it. It's just what you feel and what you build your politics around from there.
Well, rage seems to be a kind of common theme. I mean, it's something that sounds like you've dealt with in your life. MMA certainly, and it came up in the Thaddeus Russell show, is that because he trains in LA, and he said like it's such like a great outlet for rage, and it seems like, I don't know, it seems like there's a needed outlet for that in America that's kind of denied by this kind of pundit class that you guys skewer so well on your show.
Well, if you're a pundit, what is dirtier than rage?
Yeah.
What is filthier than rage? When you're, hey, shit, I'm guilty of this. When you're arguing with somebody, what makes your opponent look dumber than pointing out that they're mad?
Yeah, that you mad, bro. Yeah.
Hey, shit, we wrote a whole article about it. But, if you think rage is dirty, you think it's filthy, you have this this attitude like Calvinists have towards sex that you have towards rage. Well, shit, there's a lot you're not ever going to understand. And you're not going to understand that it's a part of a lot of people's lives, whether that is, nature, nurture, biological circumstances, the fact that we, en masse used to just fucking murder each other 600 years ago, that recent. Who knows? I was never good at science, but it is there. It's there. You know what you used to do if you were a middle-class kid in Belgium? You'd go to the Congo to kill a guy. And it's just presumed to be part of growing up.
Right.
And I don't think something like that goes away. But I also don't think everyone's supposed to try MMA. I'm not some type of proselytizer with that. But I think everyone should have an outlet. And
I just find the liberal squeamishness about that stuff to be kind of very telling, and a part of a larger kind of like softness, but it's like performative softness.
Yes,
that's like like I'm a soft guy. I'm not like those other. I mean, it's like David Simon did this shit yesterday or 2 days ago, where he was like. I mean, and he's like kind of a typical a practitioner of that kind of like white knight shit. But like Michael Moore does it too, with the kind of like idea that like I'm, ladies, like just so you know, like I'm not one of the hardened misogynist guys. I'm in this kind of. I feel like guys that like profess their like enlightened. Anti-misogyny are probably the most like fucked
they're
up
always the biggest fucking creeps every goddamn time. But
those guys jerk off a lot to nasty porn and then
which is fine. Which is fine.
That's the thing. Is like it's the dishonesty and the kind of like this weird like soft sweatery denial of like that I'm a man at all. It really infuriates me in part because like I was exposed to that kind of feminism and got very, very. I went to college in the '90s in like the UC Santa Barbara.
Oh wow!
Which was like so. I kind of like very much, bought a lot of this kind of like social justice warrior, what you would call that, I guess now. But this really like. I feel like I think I wrote this on Twitter a while ago. Like these pundits, these like Matt Iglesias types, they all look like guys that really liked the movie Chasing Amy.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like
and what's the story of the nice guy theory? I followed the rules; it should work for me.
Yeah, totally. So like there are a series of like different like terms that you guys have popularized on your show, and I wondered if we could like do a little bit of like etymology because I don't understand all of them. Like one of them is cucking.
Oh, we didn't start that.
Well, but you've popularized it.
I don't think we popularized it.
Do you know where it came from? Like the idea of literally like humiliating people online.
Well, right. I mean,
by like describing them as. I mean, I think yesterday. With the David Simon thing, there was just like hundreds of dudes telling David Simon like, "Why don't you go watch your wife get fucked by another dude?" and I was kind of like, "What is that? What like where is that from?" That level, like that that particular humiliation.
Before them, years before the alt-right was in the purview, I actually saw sort of leftists using cuck a lot, like sort of irony leftists in 2012, 2013. So who knows where it came from initially? I think the alt-right kind of really put it into the cultural mind space.
Yeah.
But where does it come from? Well, I think that a lot of men live with the fear of being dominated. And I think most men in sort of liberal upper middle class society, your Iglesiases, your Kleins, they have never been dominated by another man. They have never been in a fight, so they don't know what it is really to fight back. Maybe they've gotten sucker punched or some shit like that. It happens to people. Iglesias actually did write an article about getting sucker punched, but they've... of being in a real two-sided fight where they're just getting fucking tuned for minutes and minutes.
Right.
And that is their greatest fear, that they will be humiliated by another man. And it is a driving animus for a lot of people. It will, I used to be a bouncer at a bar. Some people just go out with that fear, like, holy shit, this is going to be the night that it happens. This is going to be the night that another man fucking humiliates me. To other people who really don't run or risk too much of running into that, your Vox masthead, it becomes smugness and trying to rid the world of whatever would make a person do such a thing.
Right.
But it speaks to a very primal fear in a lot of men, I think.
And so those type of guys live vicariously through violence, though, too. Like they love cultural stuff with violence in it, and they love war too.
Yeah,
like they love like righteous progressive war.
Right. Well, I mean, I like reading about war. I don't, it can be horrifying. It can be incredibly interesting. But, yeah, well, I guess, yeah. I did, yeah, God, I saw this guy the other day say the far left is toxically masculine because
you gotta be
issues of war and class are boy things.
Oh, God. Yeah. That kind of reductionism is so lame.
And it's also like, I just love taking my pre-workout and doing a few power cleans, and then, no bitches. We're going to resist the war in Yemen. Get Saudi Arabia out of Yemen.
Yeah.
No fat chicks. What? What the fuck? What?
Well, I mean, speaking of that, I mean, there's also like the you kind of make fun of you guys make fun of this like no fap idea on Chapo, and like I want to talk a little bit about Chapo Trap House as a phenomenon, because like how did you first get involved with that? I know I was like Matt told a little bit of this, that you guys like were on a street fight episode talking about a particular, is it a movie? A Benghazi movie.
13 Hours,
yeah.
Yes.
Right, and that was and that became like you discovered this chemistry and you guys started Chapo Trap House. But like, where were you before that? Like, at what point are you like this kind of? I mean, you're like a pseudo pundit, dude.
I wouldn't say that.
Yeah, no, you are.
You think so?
Yeah, your voice. Like when so from a guy that knows nothing about anything in terms of politics, like I mean, on Twitter, I'm not a big Twitter person, but like people on Facebook link to interesting folks on Twitter. When I first came across you, I was like, oh, there's a guy that like comments on politics all the time, obviously, and people like respond to what he says, and like he's got a kind of following and he's got a kind of attitude. So like, at what point does that happen for you? Is it Twitter? Like that you became like engaged in the public? Did you ever have a blog?
I did not have a blog. I posted on forums a lot.
Yeah.
Before the microblogging era.
Right.
And I liked it. I loved posting on forums. They were fun. You got to do that thing where you'd argue with somebody and quote their entire post and go like, okay, here's your first fallacy.
Yeah.
But,
which is very much what Twitter has become.
Yeah. But I got on Twitter, like, spent more time in it when I was going to school in Minnesota. And Minnesota can be a very isolating place. They're very nice people there, but it's hard to people usually keep with the same friends that they grew up with, the same people they've known for like 20 years beforehand. And it can be an isolating place. And, I had all these feelings about, I remember just in being horribly disappointed and shocked and disgusted by 3 years of the Obama drone campaign in Yemen. And just not knowing where to put that voice, or not knowing what to say, or wondering if I was the only one who thought that.
Isn't Yemen where the teenage boy, it was like an American citizen, was killed, right?
Yeah. And I also, I wanted to follow MMA. It was a good place to follow fighters and find rumors about fights, and it was also something to do. It's something you can look at when you're in between sets of gyms. It's something you look at when you're in one of your classes that you fucking hate, but you can just hear enough to pass. And then, this thing that I just started as a passive thing, maybe a few people I knew would follow me. Like, I suddenly started getting a response to it, and it was really fucking strange to me. It was really strange. I'd always, just in my life with people, I'd always been very evocative to people. Like, people always felt very strongly about me. But I thought that was just, I had weird friends, or people weirdly didn't like me in a very intense way, or really liked me in a very intense way. I thought it's just the product of the type of people I knew.
Yeah, you mentioned recently on Twitter that guys in their late 30s hate you.
A lot of them.
Yeah, and I was like, I'm in my late 30s. I don't feel the hate yet.
Well, I think maybe it's like Trump and Latino voters. Like, you're in the 20%, 25% that are with me.
Right. I'm with Felix.
Yeah. I do not judge anybody for being a man in their 30s. I will hear them all out before they hate me. Well, I don't know what that is.
You're part of that. You're part of that white millennial set that is the subject of so much action these days. I mean, it's weird because it's like there is the development of this alt-right thing, and I mean, I didn't know who Milo was until you guys were talking about him. I was literally who the fuck is this Milo dude? And I look it up and I'm like, I just discovered this whole world of twinks for Trump and this kind of bizarro. I mean, how do you explain the development of the alt-right?
I think the alt-right was just it was an inevitable generational split in the right. I think that there were sort of the old neoconservatives, the brigade of Falsons that made up Team B at the Defense Department. Then there was the middle link, which was Ben Shapiro, who bridges this old world conservatism with social media savvy and some type of familiarity with jokes that kids tell.
Yeah, but then that's the in, right?
That's not enough. That's not enough for people. They want something.
Breitbart, I mean, he seems like the monster that kind of really. It's kind of amazing that he kind of got this whole thing going and then his fucking heart exploded.
I mean, it's not amazing. He was a fat guy who used coke all the time. It's predictable. But,
it's like he's it's like James Gandolfini, right? It's like a ticking time bomb. But it's also just kind of amazing that this dead dude that was just literally the last thing I saw of him right before he died was him yelling at Occupy people on the street.
Yeah, calling them rapists.
Calling him rape. That famous clip where I remember thinking that guy looks like he's about to drop dead, and then he did. But the bones that he left over have now mutated into this beast, right? It's the alt-right Milo won.
Yeah, they won.
Milo fucking won.
Well, I think Breitbart was important to them because Breitbart, kind of like Trump, he really understood the performance aspect of politics.
Yeah.
There is performance in every type of identity politics. I do not say this to condemn identity politics as a concept, but it's an unavoidable truth of identity politics. There is performance. There's kind of a pro wrestling aspect.
Yes, and that's when I feel like, and I'm totally guilty. That's why I had to erase a lot of my internet history because I'm totally guilty of saying that Clinton's going to win. There's no way Trump can win. Clinton's going to win. There's no way Trump can win. That's all I said for a long time. But I was reading Matt Taibbi for a long time. He's been one of the guys that's been really stridently kind of insisting that that Trump is going to be the next president of the United States. And one of the things that he mentioned is this like clip that everyone's seen of like Trump with Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Yeah.
And like when you see that clip, you realize like, wow, like Trump's in that world that like Hillary is very, very far from. Like Hillary could never show up and do pro wrestling, right? She would feel very odd in that world.
Well, did you ever see the thing of when all the candidates in 2008 went on pro wrestling?
No.
No, they did. It was like a get out the vote thing.
Really?
And Obama, of course, was like, not totally in his element, but very natural, very charming.
He's a great actor.
Yeah.
He's probably one of the best that's
Same
had
with
that
John
seat.
McCain.
Yeah.
John McCain, another guy who's just pulled the wool over people's fucking eyes his whole life. No one will ever know what a psycho that guy is. But then you had Hillary. And it's, okay, this is a joke.
Didn't like Ann Coulter or someone like accuse John McCain of being crazy, and people thought it was very disrespectful because like because like he had been tortured or something like that. I'm sorry, that's a that's a sidebar.
No, my dad thought that McCain was a Manchurian candidate from North Vietnam. I always thought that was a funny thing. But Hillary gets up there, and it's Democrat voice. It's what we've always talked about.
Yes,
it's that robotic. We joked.
I may not be.
Yeah, where you try to relate
really
something
well,
into pop culture to show these people that you're human, and
Yes.
it's just not working. I guess today she'd go, I may not be David Carradine, but I fucking choked.
Yeah.
But it was just so stilted. It was like, I'm at SummerSlam. And it's like, you don't know what this is.
Yeah,
like you don't know anyone who knows anyone who watches this.
And that phoniness is transparent to everybody.
Yes.
And it's weird that what's weird is seeing like so many people that like the pundit class being like, no, she's not gonna, like she's got a lot of negatives, but once she became the nominee, they all kind of like became very cultish about her and were sharing all these pictures of her when she was a baby. And
Oh my God, it was so weird.
Became this odd like. And what I feel like is like, are all those people going to go work for her foundation now if they believed in her so much? I mean, it was so fake.
If those people have any sense of honor, they will leave politics forever because they're not cut out for it.
But they won't.
They won't.
They're
going to keep trying to fucking shove the EpiPen into the corpse of Clintonism.
Right. I mean, it feels like this. They got like a. They have another. Their seasons. Several seasons got renewed for their show, whatever it is. Right.
Well, I mean, we're literally the day after. Who knows what's going to happen?
Yeah.
Who knows? Look, if people want to panic, I can't tell anyone what to do.
Yeah.
I don't want to. You want to panic. If you want to huddle around what you think is the most electable Democrat, which usually means to these media people the most centrist right Democrat, fuck it, fine. You already fucked up, but I can't stop you from doing it. But we really don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
We have no idea.
Right.
Everything is quite a black box.
Yeah.
And, it helps to sort of game plan for what you think the worst scenarios could be. But this could just be dumb optimism, but I do think that Clintonism is dying. Or dead. I think this has to be it.
By that, do you mean like neoliberalism and this kind of like bland politics of...
I think there's always going to be people pushing neoliberalism just because there's so much money in doing it. But I think people are starting to realize that this is not a strategy for electoral success.
It's weird because it's like I was young when I was like 21 or 22 when 9/11 happened and Bush became president. That's when I really like came online as like really paying attention to all that shit. And like I really was as a result kind of came up into politics and into paying attention to American politics and really thinking that foreign policy was like the key to understanding everything and that everything was going to turn around like whether you were for or against the Iraq war, and that was going to determine who the next president is. John Kerry showing up in 2004 saying reporting for duty and like all that stuff. That kind of dropped off of the story in a weird way, almost like the war is here in a different... I mean, how do you conceive of what's going on with foreign policy?
Well...
Because I know that's something that interests you.
With foreign policy, I think the commentary is in this space very similar to right before World War I. And that's no mistake because levels of wealth stratification are similar to that. But a key function of one of our key illusions before World War I was that there is a way in which, my nation does war that is glorious and honorable and humanitarian. And there is a way in which our enemies do war, which is inhuman. And I remember sort of first thinking this, first with Assad's alleged chemical attacks that it may turn out he didn't do. Assad had killed so many people with low-tech barrel bombs. I didn't see these people crying out that much, but then when they thought with chemicals, oh, we have to go in, we have to go in, we have to go in.
Right.
And John Dolan has talked about this. Gas has this special terror for the aristocracy in the West because gas is the first thing that maimed the aristocratic class of officers en masse in World War I. But then I thought it again during the siege of Madaya in Syria, and people would post these, really fucking heartbreaking pictures of kids that were starving. And they would go, oh, Hezbollah's the good side, Assad's the good side, look at this. And you go, yeah, that is fucking awful. I want this to end instantly. I'd cut off my fucking foot for this to end. This is awful. But also, what the fuck did you think war was before this?
Yeah.
This is why we were anti-war, because this is what war is.
Right.
This is what they all look like. They are horrible. It is the worst thing ever. And you think if we invaded, we wouldn't be doing that exact same shit? No, because sieges, starvation, killing of civilians, these are all things that you do during war. And that's why war is so fucking bad. But how can you get to this space where you think that you know that we commit war in the right way? You do it because you don't know anyone who's fought a war. And you do that because we have this volunteer army made of middle and lower middle class people, and maybe your dad was a novelist and you got into Harvard and you got to write for a bunch of bullshit websites that GE gave you money for some fucking reason. Maybe you're Samantha Power and you wrote just a bunch of shitty books and everything you tried along your belief system blew up in your fucking face. But you don't really know people who went to war and really got their brains scrambled by some shit they did at all. They are foreign to you. And so the idea that there is a universality in the horror of war, you go, what? No, we would never starve people. We would never massacre a city. We would never do all this shit. No, moderates don't last long in war. Moderate behavior doesn't last long in war. War is awful, and you create more war by thinking that you do war the right way. And I think, that's sort of a hidden consequence of deep inequality. It is better. Sounds so Ron Fournier, but it's really true. It's better that you know what people are thinking. You got to talk to people. You got to know people. You got to know people from different classes, from different walks who have done different things. Even if you think some things they believe are disgusting, fine, fuck it. Because it's not going to go away whether you close your eyes or not.
Right.
We got to talk to each other. That is so important.
Yeah. No, I study the Vietnam War. I mean, and I teach that's all. That's like where I'm at in my kind of thinking is like the Vietnam War was this moment where there were more people from wider sections of the society participating in the war, and as a result, you had this kind of like collective outrage and this kind of collective coming to terms with like how horrible war was, because everybody did know somebody that was in it in a much more wider way than it is today. And then at the same time, the kind of like that moment where Americans become like kind of have a slightly more realistic view of what war is and are more disgusted about what it is. It's like it's all put back together in the years after.
Yeah,
by Reagan and by all the people that helped them kind of create this vision of the war on terror. And it's insane to see that put together. I mean, it's kind of like the draft in a lot of ways put a lid on the state's ability to really like perpetrate the war in the way that they wanted to.
Yeah, because you still, of course, people were more likely to be drafted, but it was a broader net, and It's interesting to see how the business of war has changed into this, humanitarian liberal sense. It's very Nicholas Kristof, Samantha Power sense. The cruise missile liberals.
Yeah, right.
God, it's been weird to see. God, it's I was
well. That's the thing. It's
13 when we went into Iraq, and I would have never guessed 2009. All these liberals screaming in my face that we had to kill a 16-year-old American.
Yeah. I mean I think my first podcast was called Topical Fever, and we did a whole show about drones and about the stuff in Yemen specifically. And what I recall about it was like both me and the guest, Justin Rogers Cooper, we were freaking out in the same way that you are, just in kind of like, how is this happening? How are liberals making the argument for this being legit? And like how do we get to this point? Because what's terrifying about it is, for us, there were people on the streets like during the Bush administration, like millions of people on the street being like, "War, this is disgusting," and it really I saw like peace signs everywhere. There was this weird like hippie rebirth that was happening. And then when Obama got in there, they're like making arguments about drone bombing being like totally legit. And it's a horrifying reversal, and no anti-war movement to speak of.
And you know what they told us about on the other side? If it wasn't humanitarian, they told us it's pragmatic. It's pragmatic that we need to hit Al Qaeda in Yemen. Guess who's stronger than ever in Yemen? Al Qaeda.
That's the thing. It's like guys that nerdy dudes like Manny Glaces that say things like, "Well, it's actually part of a wider strategy."
Yeah.
I'm not being really smart by getting Yemen right now, and it could be a lot worse. And those are despicable human beings to me.
Oh my God, yeah.
They're like, the thing is, I made a hobby, unfortunately, in my life at some point, watching like beheading videos and bombing videos and like war shit. Like I went into war porn at some point in my life, and I've seen like a lot of that stuff, and I know like I know a little bit more than the average American just by seeing YouTube videos of splattered children and people screaming. Americans don't see that stuff at all, and like you have these nerds that are like literally like making arguments about that happening on the other end. It's so infuriating. And it really does like create a politics for you in some way. I don't know what you do with it.
It's that horrible combination. Chase Iglesias is people with such fucking moral superiority and smugness, and people who also look at the world like a fucking fantasy football game. Everything's on their little fucking spreadsheet. That's why they don't feel any shame for what just happened yesterday. Yeah. Nah, it had to be fucking her. It had to be her. It had to be the fucking arms saleswoman with the rapist husband who everyone fucking hated and tried to warn you about. It had to be fucking her and her fucking ego, and them and their fucking egos. But hey, they crunched the numbers. Look, we're only in the 13% world where it didn't work out. So hey guys, back to the drawing board. We're gonna make you guys another model. Hey, I know that you're saying that Al Qaeda is more powerful than ever in Yemen, and there was a massive humanitarian crisis, and there's a generation of kids who, every time they look up and see blue skies, they get PTSD because they think of fire raining down on them. But actually, if we made 2,000 identical worlds and 900 of them, this is the best outcome. Fuck it. First of all, you don't even fucking know that. You don't even fucking know that. How in the fuck could you know that? Do you smoke DMT every day and go to fucking multiverses and you've checked them all out? No, you are born on your knees, and you will polish any execution of power that hits your right, your correct benchmarks of cultural liberalism, and it is so fucking despicable. At least, Bush's psychos, they would like that old special forces general who said we were on the Crusades. Yeah. Well, that's more honest than this asshole.
Right. Is there a part of you that feels that way? That when I woke up, so after I got through my like fluid purging last night, I felt like a twinge of dizziness seeing that Trump had won. But then I went to bed and I woke up this morning and I kind of like had this feeling of like, I don't know, this almost giddy feeling, and I felt like, God, am I like some sort of accelerationist like Zizek or something? Because I felt like if Hillary had won, nothing would have changed. And with Trump winning, something has changed. And like it's not an excitement in a positive way, but it is some sort of feeling that like we're at some sort of breaking point.
Yeah, I mean,
like you mentioned Clintonism is dying.
Right.
That's a good thing.
Well, I just shit all over this type of probability thinking.
Yeah, right.
Well, when I was thinking about nightmare scenarios, like real nightmare scenarios, I thought, this is something I've thought of a lot. Clinton wins, all the moderate GOP she got on her side instantly stab her in the back.
Right.
She can't fix Obamacare. Not that she could if she if she had the tools necessary. The VC bubble bursts, the insurance bubble starts bursting, media bubbles burst. We go in this recession. We can't lower rates anymore because they're already at zero. Then, you get like Tom Cotton and suddenly we're at war with Iran. Or, something worse than that. I mean, look, this is pretty bad for Democrats, too, because the Clinton strategy that you can lose everything from state legislatures to Senate seats. And as long as you just keep winning the presidency because you think every minority owes you every vote, you'll basically be fine. You'll keep the terror at bay. There's a lot of rebuilding that has to be done.
Yeah.
There's we say it all the time to the point where it becomes cliche and trite seeming, but municipal level has to be built on up. We cannot have any more Rahm Emanuels at all. These people have to be pushed out. They will be. They keep trying to do this. The Republican Party, which I have been told since 2006 was going to die.
Yeah. This was supposed to be the collapse of the Republican Party.
And now controls everything.
Yeah.
Well, shit, if they don't get their heads out of their asses and purge that Clintonism from their body, the Democrats will be a regional party in Northern Virginia, Connecticut, a few other places.
I don't want to live there.
Right.
But I don't want to live in Trump's America either.
Right.
Do you think Trump's America and living how is that going to change Chapo Trap House and your mission?
We thought we had a way better position to be in if Clinton won because, we're more the opposition. We get to make fun of, some of our favorite people make fun of, the cynical Democrat Fox that we had perfected making fun of.
Yes.
And now, man, we really don't know.
Yeah.
We don't know what we're going to do.
It was weird. It was like Matt texted last night. He's like, I don't even know how I'm going to be funny, And it felt like Jon Stewart after 9/11, where he's basically like, we don't know how to joke anymore, but we'll learn how to joke again. I feel like you guys will figure it out.
I think we'll be okay. Look, we don't know if the gates of hell are going to open yet.
Right. He could start a new deal, dude. Like, what if
I don't think he'll do that.
To me, that would be the most amazing thing.
Wouldn't that be weird?
The only thing he mentioned in his fucking, like, the speech that everyone said was so statesmanlike. Then these guys, it's like 2 hours ago they were saying Hitler was coming, and now they're saying, like, well, no matter who you voted for, everyone can agree it was a glorious day for American democracy. Those guys, they're going to be living in Trump's world, too. And, like, Trump speech this morning was basically like, I'm going to start we're going to be building a lot of bridges and highways and infrastructure projects. He's talking like all these public works things, bringing the jobs back. To me, that would be the most delicious irony if he was able to get like public works projects along the line of the New Deal and the CCC.
That would be weird, right? I don't think he'll do that. I think that there are going to be some pretty bad excesses some bad policies from the executive branch. Like Rudy Giuliani and Attorney General, that's like no good.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of legislation is going to be very gridlocked.
Yeah.
Very gridlocked. The blueprint is there for obstructionism.
But, the Democrats won't do the same thing that the Republicans did to Obama, will they?
It depends. Depends if they find their balls or not.
Yeah.
That's a pretty big if, right? But I don't know. We got weird times ahead.
Yeah.
You got this one party that's in charge of everything, but they all seem to hate each other. The guy who may have been Attorney General, who might be going to jail, who knows? I'm talking about Christie. The president is embroiled in like a bunch of concurrent lawsuits. That's pretty unprecedented for our time. Right. I mean, the president gets sued a lot. Bill Clinton did, but these are a lot of them. Very uncertain times ahead. I don't know what's going to happen.
No, like you said, it's a day after.
Trump has talked about why do we do regime change, but also said he wanted to put troops in Syria. I don't know. Hey, we'll find out.
Yeah.
God, we'll find out, but
it'd be really interesting to see the anti-war movement building. I'm like, where the fuck were you guys for the last 8 years?
Well,
right?
Yeah, of course, but I don't know. I don't really want to despair. I don't think despair is worth anything.
No.
It's
a worthless, self-pitying emotion.
For a lot of people, it is pure solipsism.
Yeah,
if you're Ezra Klein, you're being purely solipsistic. You're going to be fine. I think if you're someone who's more vulnerable, like I can't tell you not to despair.
Right.
Do it. If you feel it, you do it. But I think for like the liberal media types, like Jonathan Chait. Jonathan Chait last night said, "This is the worst thing that has ever happened in my life." And I thought, this is how
you're a lucky guy.
Yeah, this is how a sociopath finds pity.
Yeah.
They do it. They finds love. They do it through getting pity. This is the only way these guys know how to relate to other people, and that is no use to anyone.
Yeah,
there is work to be done. There are these insurance premiums that are rising and fucking up. Yeah. God knows what we're going to do with the Fed. There's a lot of work to be done. There are things to be rebuilt. There are people to push out. There are people that we need to make sure they never work in politics again. And
I'd like to see at least a few people suffer in some way. I don't know if we can arrange
God
that.
willing.
Yeah.
But, you can feel bad. Anyone can feel bad.
Yeah.
Of course, everyone, we were all wrong. We fucked up. No one likes feeling like a fucking idiot. No one likes having any idea what's going to happen next. But
I should have seen it coming. I felt like I knew this country more than the average New Yorker, the elite, especially the New Yorker like me that's tapped into basically a lot of professional and academic circles. But I became a bubble person.
Me too, man.
We got to get to you know what? We got to get to know the real America.
Road
again.
trip with David Brooks.
Felix Biederman. I've said this before when I was talking to Matt. The Chapo Trap House and the thing that you guys have created, I think, is such like a needed voice on the left and in the culture. The Daily Show. That style of comedy and that style of like liberal political smugness is so boring and played out.
Well, thank you. We love what you do. Thank you for having me on. That was a lot of fun.